In Business on Radio Kerry with Mary Mullins.
And you're very welcome back to the programme. We've been talking about building energy ratings and just what it means to you, and I think an awful lot of people really, don't know the seriousness and the implications of not having it. And we've been talking about it here in studio. John Carroll, you're a builder yourself. Can you just talk to me about, new builds and the responsibility the owner has really to really look into this area and get it sorted, because at the end of the day, if they don't, it falls back on them.
Yeah. Well, really, it is up to the owner of the house at the end of the day. That is their responsibility. But, when they employ a builder and professionals, their architect, their engineer, in most cases, they put themselves in their hands. And, be it good hands or bad hands, that's who you're stuck with. For myself, I would always comply with the building regulation. It's just a necessary, it's best practice. For instance, a house that I did recently in the Kerrys, before I ever started it, I would see to it that we're in compliance with everything. Everything would be planned pretty much in advance, nothing would be taken to chance. The Cert, the planning conditions, make sure all those are in place. Keep the client well informed. Advise them of that, as we go forward with your house, let's think about even future-proofing your house with, the insulation U value that's required, the air tightness. Meet all those standards. It's very important now that, people build with their conscience for the environment, to think of the future, thereby, their house is future-proofed. I always think of, let's do it the cheap way, which is the best possible way. There is no coming back to fix it, and you're building for the future. I always like to think that, in my case, I look for the best way forward, and that would be, for instance, the insulation, which is very important. You'd start with the floor. What are you going to use in the floor? The building reg says that, you've got to be 0.15. So let's do that or better. Mm-hmm. Your walls have to be 0.27. Let's do better. Let's put a 6-inch cavity there. Let's do better by putting a 6-inch cavity, by pumping them with platinum bead. You're getting 0.19, which is, there again, better. When you come to the roof, let's do better. The building reg is 0.20. What can we do in the roof, which will be cost effective to get a far better U value, thereby future-proofing your house. You'll have the return on it, whereby that your house will be very comfortable. The energy that it will take to heat your house will be less. Mm-hmm. You'll be very happy with the end product at the end of the day when you're living with it.
Yeah.
Cool in summer and warm in winter.
Mm-hmm. I suppose a lot of people would say that kind of thing might go over their head a little bit, and people can be inclined to cut corners in order to save costs. But at the end of the day, I suppose, it is going to come back to them. It
is going to come back to them. But, ideally, if they select a good professional to build their house, and, that he's got a conscience, and that, he needs to sleep at night as well, and that he does things, best practices and procedures, and to look after their best interest, and that's where I come in. I look after their best interest and advising them of each stage as we go along, so as they're fully informed. Mm-hmm.
And I know you were saying that, a lot of homes, maybe they're not complying with these regulations at the moment, but John Griffin, you were saying you have been speaking to the Department of the Environment, who say they are going to come down on people and they are going to enforce the regulations.
Yeah, again, it's a manpower issue, but they are catching up. So, they have the planning records, the planning files, and they have made it quite clear that if they come across dwellings that aren't compliant, they will enforce compliance. If that means going back and retrofitting the relevant renewable energy technology, then they will instigate that. And there is some attitude out there at the moment in that exemptions will be granted under certain circumstances. They've made building control made it quite clear they will not be allowing any exemptions. So it's a serious problem. It's a serious issue. Mm-hmm. The first step of that is that very, very soon they will be requiring provisional BR certs to be submitted with a commencement notice, and that's coming in the next couple of months.
So that means when you're ready to build, you hand in your notice to the county council.
Provisional BR cert.
You have to have this
before you can start building.
Okay. Just with regards to retrofitting, I mean, what kind of things are you talking about? We hear a lot about solar panels and that kind of thing. What kind of route would you be going down?
If you went the traditional route and just put an oil boiler in, with basic controls, a switch to turn the boiler on and off, mm-hmm. that doesn't comply with the building regulations for controls, and it doesn't comply on the renewable energy section. So you could be in the position whereby you'd have to retrofit proper time and temperature controls for hot water, living and sleeping accommodation. Then you would be in the position of having to retrofit solar panels to conform to the renewable energy section of the building regulations. And on the 200 square metre house, if your insulation is not very good and your air tightness is not very good, you could be looking at a substantial solar system, 8-10 square metres, plus changing the hot water cylinder as well. So it could be catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. And, how much would you be talking about? Would be a couple of €1,000 really, would it, to retrofit? If you might know a bit more about that.
And the rest, from scratch, you won't have to buy a second cylinder because you'll have bought the correct cylinder first off.
Yeah.
Secondly, when you're doing your roof, you won't have to slate that part of the roof because your panels will probably be in the roof for a start. So retrofitting would mean getting scaffolding up, and applying a plumber who is qualified and on the SEI registration list, changing the cylinder, getting new pipework down to your cylinder, which might not be the easiest if your cylinder's on the ground floor of a 2-storey building. Then trying to route pipework from your roof down through the first floor into the ground floor might be near impossible and could end up being messy. So you've all had to worry about retrofitting. The best case scenario could be a 2-storey with the cylinder in the hot press upstairs, which wouldn't be too bad to change. But if it's on the ground floor, which a lot of new houses would have pressurised cylinders and so on, on the ground floor, it could be a costly, messy job.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier about the ratings and about, if someone is advertising an apartment, they're not at the moment obliged to put the rating in.
Currently, you can advertise a house or apartment for rent or for sale without having to show that you have energy rating done for that premises.
Mm-hmm.
Very soon, according to the Department of Environment, they're waiting for legislation to be passed at the moment where that any person advertising a house or apartment for sale or rent will have to publish on the ad the actual BER result. So if it's a G or a H or a D or an A or B, whatever it is, will have to be showing on the ad to show that they have the BER cert done.
Mm-hmm. So, it will obviously save a tenant a lot of money because...
Well, they can flick through the ads a little bit quicker and say, okay, that apartment is going to cost me X amount to run a month, whereas the ads down below here are showing an A3 apartment or a B apartment. That's going to save me a lot of money. So, and I'm going to bother ringing that guy. I'll ring this guy,
So it's beneficial, obviously, too, for the owner of the apartment or home.
It's an incentive to the owner to, let's say, okay, this apartment now is like 15, 20 years old. We should look at, making it better, improving it, and we might have a chance of renting it out, and for maybe a higher price.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to leave it there. Thanks very much for coming into studio. It has been great, very interesting. I think, as you all said, a lot of people really don't know a whole pile about this, and obviously if the department are going to come back and enforce this, it is going to mean a lot more money for people. So thanks very much for joining me in studio. Mike Tehan and John Griffin of HSB and John Carroll of Self-Built Munster, who are all in studio with me. Coming up after the break, we'll be catching up with some of the endeavourees.